So what is this field? Hopefully you've seen it now. What is this weird shimmery field that seems to have some kind of static element to it? Because when I move, when I sway side to side and I see something in the foreground moving in relation to something a little bit further away, there's something solid there. Well, not solid, something that doesn't seem to be moving, some kind of almost, dare I say, matrix grid. But there's also a lot of shimmery stuff going on as well, something that's more dynamic, and they're kind of mixed together. And even after 20 years or so, that's basically what I see. I just see it more easily. I don't see colours. Sometimes people talk about seeing auras, colours of auras. I don't see that. But what I have learned over the last 20 years or so is more about the science of the world we inhabit. And one of the things that's very interesting is the fact that we live in a global atmospheric circuit. So this is not woo-woo stuff that maybe nobody has ever proved. So this is the natural electricity that exists all around us on the earth, and the most obvious manifestation of it is lightning. And we're familiar with lightning. It's not subtle, bang, flash. And this is a discharge, electrostatic discharge of the natural electricity. And we live in a part of the world here in Britain where we don't get so much of that, but in the tropics. And I remember going on holiday in the mountains of Austria or Switzerland when I was a child, and there were lightning storms every night. It was a normal thing. So this is going on all the time, and that's because solar wind, the earth is rotating, obviously, and then the sun is impacting on some parts of the earth at all times. The magnetic field of the earth is protecting us from the solar wind, but the charged particles and the X-rays that are coming from the sun are ionizing molecules, atoms in the atmosphere, in the upper atmosphere. And there's a part of the upper atmosphere called the ionosphere. It stretches from about 30 miles to about 100 miles up, so it's a very big area. And it's getting quite dark in here, isn't it? Might not even. Anyway, and yes, so the action of the solar wind ionizes all these particles, and this area of the ionosphere essentially is very, very electrically conductive. There's no problems with electric currents, and because there's also wind, temperature and wind, these currents move around. But the main thing is that there's a lot of charged particles up there, and on the surface of the earth we have a lot of electrons accumulating. They're generated, knocked off in the core of the earth or down beneath our feet, and those electrons make their way to the surface and they want to get to the sky, and we're all in the way. In fact, we're not in the way, we're a very good way to get to the sky. So air is fairly low, well, unless it's ionized, air has pretty low conductivity. It's not a good way for electrons to travel, for electricity to travel, but life is. So trees, for instance, trees are a pretty good way because they're full of moisture. So electrons can make their way up through the roots of trees to the tips of trees and find their way onto the next part of their journey at the tips. So the tips of branches, like we saw on the last video, actually. And interestingly, also animals and the likes of us are also another way that electricity can make its way to the sky. Our contact points, if you like, so for hooves, toenails, claws, they're all made mostly of keratin. Keratin is a pretty good electrical conductor. Likewise, horns, hair, These are also ways that electrons can leap off, so they can travel through them, and then points. Electrons like points because it's much easier for an electron to leave a surface from a point than it is from a flat panel. So if you want to do something dramatic and make big sparks, then you get a couple of large brass balls, for instance, and then you build up the charge, and eventually it will go boof and make a dramatic spark, and that looks really really fun. But if you want to generate a continuous current, if you want to make it easy for electrons to move, you generate points, and nature is full of points. If you look around you in a natural environment, there's trees, there's animals, there's people, we're kind of animals as well, and we're all assisting the journey of electrons to the sky. I'll just have a look around. So what is this thing that we're seeing? Well, I think at this point in time, there's probably the electric field. It's as simple as that. The electric field is there. If you go to a search engine and say, can I see the electric field? Then you're going to get some kind of answer along the lines of, you can get yourself a meter, those little meters that measures the electric field, and you can look at the reading and it'll say, there's an electric field. But having spent 20 years looking at this fuzzy stuff, so it's just everywhere, whether you're in a woods or out in the open, it's much easier to see here. Then there's clearly something there, and I know there's an electric field. I don't know about anything else. And the static element, because electric fields are pretty consistent, electrons are moving, and when we're talking about electrons, we're talking about pretty small currents. At the Earth's surface, it's about 100 volts per meter. So, top of my head, the voltage is about 180 volts on a normal day. When there's a storm, then that charge builds up, and if it's really extreme, then your hair starts standing on end. Then you really know that you shouldn't be out in the open, because that's electrons really wanting to travel through you to the sky, and that wouldn't be good en masse. So the electric field, yes, I think at this point in time I would say that some aspect of the electric fields, why my eyes are able to perceive them, I don't know, I can't answer that. Does the electric field generate some kind of very dim light which we're able to see? I don't know. Is it, I assume it's my eyes that's seeing it. Maybe there's some other aspect, but yeah, I mean, look, it's ridiculous. So yeah, so maybe it's simple physics, maybe it's not the aura of the tree, or it's the space that the tree is growing into, which at one point I did wonder about. Is it the bit, is the tree growing into this space? Is it revealing to me where the tree is going to grow? And maybe it's both. Maybe the tree does grow into the shape of the electric field around it. I don't know. I haven't found any science at this point in time that tells me that's the case. So for now, the mystery is partly solved. Yep, if it's the electric field, that makes a lot of sense to me. I did study physics at university, and there's not really a mystery to that. And I know it's there, and I'm immersed in it. And obviously I have an electric field around me as well, which explains why I couldn't see around me an extension of my fingers and different body parts. So yes, if anybody else has any thoughts on this, I will be very, very happy to hear them. But for now, I think that's what's going on.